Hello, good evening everyone. 𝗘𝗀𝘁𝗁𝗏𝗁𝗏. Okay, welcome back to our this Pro E Academy episode 47. Okay, today we're going to talk about the RPGT, Real Properties Gain Tax in 20221. Okay, so before we start, I think I need your help actually to help us to share this video out in your timeline so that your friends or family can also come and learn for this today topics. Okay, so if you are thinking of selling off the property in 2022, I think one of the important factors I think you have to be considered, it will be your RPGT. If not, you might need to pay extra cost if you're not include this RPGT inside. Okay, so normally what you're thinking about, is it still need to pay RPGT in 2022, or is it also apply to foreigner as well, and how to waive the RPGT? Okay, today we are honored to invite our one of the senior negotiators, 𝗏𝗏𝗏, to come share with us. So welcome. Hi, 𝗏𝗏𝗏.
Hello. Okay.
Hello.
For week 47, welcome back everybody. To those celebrating Chinese New Year, Happy New Year, 恭喜發財. Still very much in Chinese New Year mode, but then I will try my best today to share with you a quick report on the RPGT 2022's outlook. Okay. This news was, if you are a keen reader on property news, this news was already made available in October last year, but seeing that it's the new year and it's something that a lot of people might have missed out on, and being the new year, just like to reshare it as a piece of news and as a report to everybody. So a little bit about who am I. Quick rundown.
𝗏𝗏𝗏, so you want to share the screen?
Oh, my screen not sharing again.
Yeah. Okay. I saw your screen already.
Oh, okay. So
okay.
This time it's not me.
I leave the time to you.
This time it's not me. Okay. So a little bit about who am I. Been in this line been in sales and marketing all my life. Came from management and marketing, and I've been in real estate with Jason since December 2019. Okay, this is going to be the 4th year. This 3 full years together already. Yay. Okay. So 2021. Oh, this is going to be the 3rd full year together. Sorry. So basically, that's me. So there are a lot of famous sayings in life, and one of the most common and famous sayings is, in this world, nothing is certain but death and taxes lah. Okay, of course there are a lot more other things which are certain, but then but this is just one of the famous sayings for saying six. So for today's report, before I go on to talk about the taxes part, which is the RPGT part, I would like to do a little quick report and update on my previous reporting, which I reported last year about, if you guys have been following and remembered our topics. One of them was the MM2H, the changes to MM2H. Okay, so why we want to do this is because we want you to remember this class as well, so that in future you can look back to see how such changes such news and changes to government policy in Malaysia can affect the property market, or the whole of or affect Malaysia in general as a whole. Okay, so just a quick one It's just one slide. It's that MM2H, although there was drastic changes, which made it a lot more difficult for a lot less desirable and a lot more difficult for applicants to apply for it, we still had 111 new applications received in 2021, although stricter conditions were applied to it. Okay, so this is just a quick update to it. So far, so good. So whether or not whatever we will talk about later on will affect us, we do not know, but we hope that results could be just as positive as this one. Okay, to show that there is still a lot of interest in the property market in Malaysia. Okay, so back on the topic of RPGT, but more onto taxes first. Okay, taxes are unavoidable. It is something that people used to pay. People or companies in this illustration used to pay to the government in order to fund, national development. All right. So for national development's sakes, that is what we pay taxes for. Okay. It's not just national development. There's of course also a lot of our own state and own town maintenance. And for today's topic, we'll be talking about the estate we'll be talking about taxes that relates to estate and property. In Malaysia, it's looped together. Some other countries is separated. Some other countries there's a clear separation. In Malaysia, it's very closely related and looped together. In some other countries, there are some taxes which we do not have, and in Malaysia, there are some taxes which we have, which other countries do not have. This is just the way things are around the world. But for today, we will talk about estate and property, basically. Okay, they are all managed under the same department in this case. So what are the most common forms of taxation in property in Malaysia that we can encounter on a day-to-day basis or as a first-time buyer? The very first form of taxation a government would impose on any citizen in Malaysia the most common one would be stamp duties. Whenever you are making a purchase, on top of the price that you see, on top of the list price, you will notice that there's always a lot of other miscellaneous fees especially if you're purchasing a secondary market sub-sale development. You notice that there will be a lot of stamp duties which aren't exempt. Whereas if you purchase from primary market, like say project, pre-built or under construction projects, a lot of these will be waived, especially in the last since 2019, 2021, last 3 years, we had a lot of our stamp duties being waived for the primary and project market. Okay, not all of them, of course, selected projects, but basically these were one of the exemptions that the government gave in order to help boost the property sector. Okay, another one which we will encounter quite commonly on an annual basis would be the quit rent, cukai tanah, or assessment fees, or cukai taksiran. These will be paid to your local municipal councils and or state governments. These are mostly for the upkeep. This one, the earlier one, stamp duty, goes directly to the national federal government. Okay, so this is for all. These fees go towards funding all national projects, whereas these much more smaller. These smaller fees are taxed annually, and they go towards basically a lot of it, like especially assessment, it goes to your annual maintenance of your township, basically. Okay, so things like your lights, your street lamps, your roads and all that, most of that comes from the assessment fees and quit rent. Okay, and lastly, when buying and selling, of course, there's a lot more. There are some other smaller ones in between, like tax in rental income. That is one more. But lastly, the most important one, which we will be covering today, would be real properties gains tax. Okay, in Malaysia, we charge a gains tax on property. There are countries which charge gains tax on other things, like if you see wait, where's my marker pen now? Sorry. If you see over here on this illustration, there's one thing called capital gains. So that will be things like if you sell off your company or if you sell off your shares, those gains are taxable. In Malaysia, we do not have that, but we do have a very common one, which is, we do have a very heavy one, which is the real properties gains tax. Okay, so basics to, so basically that kind of covers what taxes are being charged in Malaysia, mostly. And now we move on to the basics of RPGT, and then what changes have been applied, how it affects the market, and how it affects us. Okay, so RPGT, what is the basics to RPGT? Basically, it's just another form of taxation that was implemented in 1976 under the Real Properties Gains Tax Act in 1976. It is monitored by the Inland Revenue Board, basically 𝙁𝙗𝙘𝙗 Malaysia, which is the tax department of Malaysia, basically. So this is controlled and monitored by them. It covers all forms of real estate, property, real estate, and so basically it has been in effect since 1976 lah. Okay, and this is a brief theoretical description of what it is. Tax is levied on the gains made from the difference between disposal price and acquisition price. It sounds very wordy and very scholarly. Here is a much more simpler, broken down, very basic illustration of how it really works. Okay, let's say you bought your house 2015 at 1 million ringgit. In 2020, you sell it off for 1.5 million ringgit, which means you made a gain or profit of 500,000 ringgit. Okay, so that is the amount that is taxable under the RPGT Act. Okay, of course, in between, how taxes work in Malaysia, it taxes you based on your actual net income and net profit, right? So, of course, this 500,000 ringgit gain, a lot of it will be lost to legal fees. Not a lot of it, but a little bit of it will be lost to things like legal fees, other miscellaneous fees which are chargeable to the cost of sale, like agent fees, like to people like myself, we do charge a service fee. There are other smaller documentation and legal fees that are looped under it, which you can cancel out. So your final taxable amount might not be 500,000, would usually be a lot less, but this is just a very rough and very basic idea of what RPGT is. Basically, it is a form of taxation to tax the gains you made from the property which you sold. Okay, so why are we talking about RPGT today if this news was announced last year? Again, purely because it is the new year and it is something which a lot of people might have missed out on. And also, so we are basically here to report on it. Okay, so what are so what's the big deal about RPGT in 2022? We will get onto it later on, but here's just a little snippet of the news report which was made last year, that on how REDA, basically the Home Association Board, was very happy with the changes made, that these taxes would be removed. So what are the changes made? Here is a chart of the historical outlook of tax rates. Basically, this is RPGT in Malaysia for individuals. I will not talk about, there are a lot of other rates which are available out there for people who are non-Malaysian, PR, non-citizens, MN2H, whatever not, commercial entities, local or foreign, doesn't matter, those didn't really change much, so we will not really talk about it too much because those still follow the old rate that was set in 2021. The biggest changes over here are all for individuals only, which I am assuming most of you who are watching this are. You are all individual buyers, all right? So if you notice, over here in 2021, the biggest change is on the 6th year onwards of your property ownership, you can sell off your property for free. Okay, so you can let it go and you make net gain, just like in stock market. Whatever you gain is yours. It's tax-free income. All right. Unless of course you're a day trader, then that sort of income is a bit different lah. But if you're just a casual trader, your mom and pop kind of trader, then yeah. So whatever income you make on it is tax-free after the 5th year. On the 6th year, yeah, after the 5th year lah. Okay, so per se, now is the year 2022. If you bought a property in the year 2016, now it will be 6 years later. If you sell it off now, you do not have to pay any form of taxes to the government. All right. So one of the reasons I think behind why a government reintroduced a zero RPGT taxation, zero taxation on property being sold 6 year onwards is because the government, when they first introduced the 5% on year 6 onwards, was also the years, if you notice, when the HOC, Home Ownership Campaign, was introduced. It was another form of tax exemption. You remember earlier when I talked about what form of taxes that the government charges to Malaysians or buyers who are looking to make purchases in Malaysia. The very first form of taxation which they encounter would be the stamp duty to purchase your home. Basically, the stamp duty which you pay to them to get your land titles, to get your loans approved, and basically just government letting you buy a property to begin with. Those are the forms of taxation which they charge lah. So between these times, what we noticed is that because they gave away, because a lot of projects were stamp duty free in the primary market, so the government to cover for that, I guess that's why they had to implement the 5% minimum on your property when you try to let it go lah. If it's if it's 5 years later on year 6, they still charge you a minimum fee anyway. So I guess this was just one of the forms of taxation to cover for the losses made here. But because in the last 3 years, we experienced very, very special kind of 2.5 years, thanks to COVID-19. The HOC got extended and a lot of these policies weren't changed. So now that it's 2022 and we expect the world to recover from the pandemic, the government has re-implemented a zero form of taxation on your property from the 6th year onwards. What is more interesting is in the years 2008 and 2009, there was zero taxation at all. And remember the news report earlier about how the Housing Association was so happy with these forms of no tax because it will help spur the market. Here's a little report on that particular year itself. Okay, so how does it affect the market when a government reduces taxes? If you notice from the years 2004 to 2007, this is of course the report was a lot longer, but we're just looking at this particular section to see how the market was affected when taxes were relieved. It creates this is in thousands, so this would be about 2.9 million homes exchanged, all right? And this is in billions. So this is 59.96 billion okay, in ringgit. This is RM. This is quantity, number of homes exchanged in thousands. All right. So basically, in the year 2004 to 2007, there was ups and then there was downs and there was ups again and there was slight ups. But basically, when the government announced that 2008 will be RPGT free all the way, what it created was a rather huge suddenly a surge in demand for housing because it was cheaper for owners to let go because owners didn't have to pay any more fees during that year, and it so being cheaper to let go because they do not have to put taxes into consideration. It was also cheaper to purchase, which helped create a growth spurt that was not seen in between the years before that. Okay, and this growth spurt has grown till today, all right. So it grown till a bit later on. Of course, it took a dip, but it is an example which I think the Malaysian government has looked upon to try and repeat to recover ourselves through this special pandemic phase. So if you look at if you look at these 2 years when the government said, okay, no more RPGT, what happened was supply became very high, so prices started to drop because because there was high supply, there was also high demand at the time, but everybody was competing to let go of their property as much as they can, so prices started to drop. And then when there was no more RPGT, these were the years when the primary market was at its strongest, at its highest demand. We do not have the latest until this year. It, of course, is going back up recently, if you guys pay attention to it. But what relief of taxes this is, it helps create a demand in the market for people who have always been looking to either let go or looking to purchase, especially in the secondary market. Okay, so for to help spur the primary market, which is the project side, of course, there were other campaigns like the HOC Okay, so this was how RPGT changes to RPGT to the taxation has affected the property market as a whole. All right. So it created a growth spurt. It helped move a lot. It helped lower some prices to create interest, and it basically helped create a demand in Malaysia again. So how does it benefit me? Now, of course, for every piece of property, there's a buyer and seller, right? So RPGT in this case is a tax which heavily affects all forms of taxes, which I talked about earlier. So things like stamp duty, things like assessment credit rent. Eventually, as a owner, as a buyer, doesn't matter if you're purchasing it from a developer, as in the project and primary market, or sub-sales secondary market, you experience it somewhere along the way. Of course, sometimes there's exemptions like stamp duty, and like in this case, there's exemptions in terms of tax. But along the way in your property investment, buying or selling life, you experience all forms of those taxes. So how should I take advantage of the exemptions that are being made? So there are a lot of you which I believe are existing owners, which have a lot of older property which you wanted to let go before this, but did not want to because you could not come to a price which you could compromise with to pay off your the RPGT taxes. Right now is a very good time to let go a lot of your existing properties, especially old investments which you might not have any idea about what you want to do with anymore, or that you do not want to deal with, or especially inheritance. If you inherited property from your family members, okay, and you do not, and you just could not let it go because it was very expensive to let go in the first place, and you could not get a good price, now is a very good time to let go of property like that. Of course, with the capital gains, it would also be a good time to reinvest in other properties if you're interested. To continue searching, you can search with us, or diversify into whatever other forms of investments you want to, or just enjoy the money that you've made for the rest of your life. Okay. Now, as a potential buyer, like I mentioned earlier, this was a very good time because prices. This is percentage of changes in house prices, right? So now is a very good time to negotiate for the dream home or dream property that you always wanted for, because now is a time which you can tell owners, look, you don't have to pay any more taxes on it. Okay, if it's out after the 6th year. Before this, you still had to pay a 5% minimum tax on it. 5% on taxes on it, minimum, whether you like it or not. So now you don't have to, you can save on it. Could you please lower it by another 5%? This is a very good time for you, if you're a potential buyer, to go and search for, or to try and renegotiate for with the owner that you've always wanted to buy from. Okay, so yeah, that is the how to take advantage of it. What if it is unavoidable? Okay? So like you are in between the years, say like you are somewhere in here right now, it's unavoidable. You still need to pay taxes anyway. Okay, and of course there are exemptions which we'll get to later on, but you do not want to use those exemptions because that whatever percentage you might have to pay might not be that expensive anyway, and you just want to get rid of it because you got a good price and you're happy with the price. So according to the Estate Department, basically Valuation and Property Services Department of Malaysia, or Jabatan Penilaian dan Perkhidmatan Harta Malaysia. This is direct from their website, this illustration. It basically tells you to use your lawyer, client a lawyer, to deal with the IRB, which is the tax LHDN, and they will forward it over to these guys, which is this department, and they will give you a proper valuation, and they will issue you a form of payment at the end of it after 8 working days. Okay, so this is a very simplified flowchart. Okay, basically it says use your lawyer, or if you would like to use your agent, we can do it for you as well. Okay, but if per se you are a much more shrewd customer, you would like to save on some of the fees that might be charged here to do it yourself, DIY. It is not a very difficult thing to do to resolve your RPGT for the year. It's just like all the other taxes which you do at the end of the year, at the end of the taxation year, right? All you have to do is go over to Inland Revenue, LHDN. You can either do it online or physically. You just need to get the correct forms. In this case, the RPGT related forms, 1A, 3, 4. Okay, and this 4-step process, you fill them in accordingly. Number 1, if you want to apply for tax exemption, this is number 2. But if you don't, you just skip ahead to step 3, and you will require the buyer to also help you verify by completing RPGT form 4. And of course, you need all your supporting documents, so SPA from purchase and SPA on sale to be attached onto it as proof. Submit it to IRB and wait for the notice of payment, and that's it. Okay, so you save on you save on all the fees over there if you are much more discerning buyer or seller. Okay, so yeah, this is basically the simple 1, 2, or 1, 3, 4 process you need to take, right, in order to resolve this RPGT thing. Okay, so yeah. Next thing is if you are going to pay for your taxes, RPGT, of course, you got to also check what year. Let's say if you have to pay that means you are in you are in one of these years of ownership, okay, between year 1 to year 5 as an individual Malaysian owner. So you just got to check also at the same time which particular year of ownership you are in whenever you fill up the form before you submit it and await for payment. Okay, so just make sure that if you're doing it this year onwards, 2022, to follow this rate, although it's not much different from the years before that since 2014, although it's not much different, but just make sure to always double check and be sure of it lah. Even if you do not have to pay for RPGT, okay, even if you are after year 6, it is, correct me if I'm wrong after this, Jason, but then if I remember correctly, you still have to report your sales to the IRB for taxation purposes, because whenever, basically in general, if you get money anyway inside, if it's a huge amount, IRB will always question if you do not report it, IRB will eventually come and question you, hey, where did this money come from? So you still have to report it anyway, and even if you don't have to pay anything after that lah. Okay, so Jason, please correct me if I'm wrong after this, but yeah, that is another point that I want to share. Okay, so now we've talked about the report, the changes about it, how it's affected the markets, how it will benefit me as a buyer or as an owner, how do I actually go about doing it, and if I want to be exempted. So step 2, if I want to be exempted from paying any form of RPGT anyway, okay, how do I qualify and how do I go about doing it? All right, so currently for Malaysians and Malaysians, citizens and PRs, there are 4 special exemptions ongoing. There was a 5th one last year, but it's already over, so we won't talk about it. It was also a special exemption last year, same thing if you're a first-time seller. But basically, there is currently a one that has been, not currently, but it's been quite ongoing for quite long. The number one exemption that most sellers I have met go for would be the one-off exemption. That means once in a lifetime, I can skip RPGT payments. So a lot of the sellers that I've met who have done this, what they do is they save up their once in a lifetime special Joker card pass for what they believe will be their most expensive property, which they want to let go of. Okay, so this is usually the case of what I've seen. All right, and this is of course only for residential property. If it's commercial property, no, you don't get to you don't get to enjoy this benefit. But then once in a lifetime pass is if you are looking to let go what you think is your most expensive property in your lifetime, then you can use this pass. Okay, exemption of sale between family members. So another form of exemption, disposal of property between family members. Now this exemption, okay, of course you can use it multiple times, is only between up and down lines. So like parents to child parents, grandparent, child grandparents, whatever. In between siblings, it's excluded, unfortunately. So if you are bro, sis selling to each other, you still have to pay your RPGT based on whichever year of ownership you are in. Okay. Third exemption. This is quite new, and this was introduced for this year. Is quite new to me. Okay, it says exemption on 10% of taxable gain, or pay 10,000 ringgit. Or 10,000 ringgit, whichever is higher. So let's say if you are in a higher bracket, say like 30%, you can request for a special exemption to either remove 10% of it off, so you become a 20% bracket, or 10,000 ringgit of the taxable gain, whichever one is higher lah. Okay, so this will help you make your RPGT a lot more affordable for payment. All right. I have not been able to verify if this is a one-time thing or if it is going on for the rest of the year for multiple properties. But as far as I've seen, this is the case. I believe it's a one-off thing for one property or 1 year. But yeah, this is one of the, it's not really exemption, but then it's one of the methods you can use to help alleviate your taxes that you have to pay, the amount of taxes that you have to pay. And lastly, if you are an owner or buyer of low-cost homes, okay, if you're an existing owner and you have already gone out of the low-income bracket, so if you were B40 and you've successfully made it to the M40 or T20 bracket, but then you still own a affordable house under 200,000 ringgit and you want to sell it off, you are also exempted from paying any forms of RPGT. Okay, of course, there comes with a caveat that you have to have held the property for 5 years, and you actually have to ensure, or I did not list it down here, you have to actually ensure that you are selling it off to a buyer who is going to be living in it and not using it for commercial purposes. That is one of the special caveats that's attached with this exemption. But yeah, basically that's it. That is one of those are 4 of the exemptions that are available right now. If you're a buyer or if you're an owner looking to sell, hope you come and look for us after watching this video, and I hope you are able to take advantage of these new exemptions and these new tax laws being made possible in Malaysia moving forward from this year onwards lah. Okay, so that covers my topic for tonight. If possible, Jason, could you just come correct me if I'm wrong, that even if you are selling after the 6th year, you still need to report to IRB anyway. And yeah, that basically covers my presentation for the night. I just got back from Chinese New Year. I hope this was informative to you, and I will now pass it back to Jason. Okay. Stop sharing.
Hey, hello. Well shared by Chikan. So thank you for your, I think, the research on that, and people will get more understanding about this RPGT. Okay. So for those who have any comments, you can put on the comments if you have anything to ask. So please do welcome to put in the comments so that we try our best to answer the questions. Okay, if you want to get the ebook for today's topics, please type a comment in PRO. Okay, our person in charge will send you the ebooks. Okay, to you all. Okay, please type in comments PRO. Then we will send you the ebook for today's topics. Okay. Any questions?
Jason,
Okay.
very quick one.
Yes.
So do I have to report my RPGT do I have to report to IRB even if I do not have to pay RPGT for that year?
When you're doing the selling side, actually they already done it for you, the solicitor.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so lawyer do for you, right?
Yeah, the lawyer already done for you. So don't worry about that. So for those who are not sure, you always can ask your solicitor about that process if you're not sure about that. Okay, because sometimes they might change. We don't know. Okay, so sometimes they might have another new policy coming up. Okay, but at the current moment, we are following what Chikan is mentioned just now. It's really the very good times if you hold very long times. I think properties and very good returns. I think now is the best time to let go. Okay, because that you don't need to pay the gain tax. I think this is one of the things. A lot of countries, they are actually paying a lot of property gain tax. Okay, this is one of the good benefit provided by the government. So please take the opportunity if you want to sell current in 2022. Okay, because previously I think a lot of properties been HOC is mainly for the the project side. Okay, so this is very good for those who are in the sub-sales sector. Okay. Okay, thank you. I think we have some chat and also the Fatih. They are okay. Our person in charge will send you the ebook for this. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. And thank
Yeah.
you, Chicken, for the fantastic sharing. Very good research. Okay. So hope to see you all next week. So we have another topics. Also stay tuned. We'll see you next week. Same time, 9 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Good night. 恭喜發財.
恭喜發
Happy New Year,
財。
right? Okay. Bye. Bye, everyone.